All right, so here's everything that's been done electrically and how my no spark issue was solved. So first of all, I got the new regulator and rectifier, and that didn't have anything to do with the spark, but I don't know, I feel like I had all but burned out the old ones by putting that seat cover on it. So I'm glad I have the new ones. And I have a new AGM battery, and I kind of went old school with this. I wanted a lead acid battery. Just, I don't know. I haven't had one in so long, and I just felt like the cool thing to do. So I got an AGM battery, working great. And the reason I had no spark was the coil, and that was one of the prime suspects. So as soon as I put the new coil in, I got spark again, and everything is looking good. One other thing, I got a new carburetor. And the reason I did that is my old one was just acting a little funky. The throttle cable was tight on it. I don't know, something just didn't feel 100%. It was probably okay, but I figure, you know, in my experience, a good, fresh, new carburetor just makes starting these things so much easier. So it was 80 bucks, and I splurged, and I got a new carburetor, and just rejetted it with the jets I had, because they were brand new. I just swapped them from the other carburetor. And the only difference is for some reason, the choke lever is just sort of swapped so it's facing the other way. And in hindsight, I'm sure I could have swung it back around. I didn't even think of it, but it's not a big deal. And then you have these very unfortunate pinkish purple venting hoses that are coming down. So I'm gonna swap those out with clear ones. But everything is looking really good. And my plan with these was I was gonna mount them underneath. Yeah, I thought that would look better, but there was no room after all for the rectifier. I could have gotten the regulator under, but it actually I saw it more than I'd like. It sort of got in the way. It wasn't as hidden as I thought. And then the rectifier wouldn't go under. There's a bracket sort of in the middle, so it wouldn't fit. So it would have just looked funky having one under and one over. So I'm just leaving them as they are, which is fine. At this point, I honestly don't care. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap these plugs. I've got kind of a black wrap. It's like a cable wrap that will just, you know, sort of make it look like the wiring harness there. So it's just under the seat. It will just sort of disappear in the shadow of the seat, so to speak. So that's how I'm going to sort of solve this, you know, all these plugs sticking out. But these are looking good. They're going to get plenty of air now. And again, I'm glad I got the new ones. And real quick, as far as the rear fender, you know, typical of everything that's happened with this bike, it was about an inch too long and did not fit at all. And the holes were all an inch or more out of, you know, out of whack. There was absolutely no way that this was going to get jimmied on. And I couldn't even really modify it. You know, I was thinking maybe I could just drill new holes, but just the way the front kind of dipped in there, it was just too long. It just wasn't happening. It was an absolute no-go. But there was damage on the top of it. You can see there in the picture. Those aren't fingerprints. That's actually damage to the finish. So it was almost as bad as this one, you know, at the end of the day. And this one cleaned up fairly well. And, you know, I'm kind of glad it's the original. One of my main gripes with this was it was sort of kinked. It wasn't straight. It was kind of kinked to the left. And it looked bad from the back. So I just sort of went to work and I started shimming it. You can sort of see like right there with a few washers. It doesn't look like much, but it made a big difference. So now this thing sits perfectly straight in there. And then with this rear taillight assembly, my problem with this was it did not sit flush with the fender. It was sort of kinked to the left and then twisted to the left. And again, the whole thing just looks so stupid from the back. So it turns out that the internal bracket that holds this on to the fender was bent. And it was very hard to tell. The only reason I figured it out is I was just trying a different bolt on it. As I screwed it on, I saw that it was going at a sharp angle. So I bent that back straight. So now it sits perfectly flush with the fender. It's perfectly straight on there now. So now that everything fits properly and is straight, I actually am very happy with this. I'm glad that I'm keeping these original parts. It looks really good now. It looks right. So even though the other fender didn't work, and I'm out, you know, what I spent on it, whatever. And I knew that it was damaged. I got a discount on it. It worked out in the end. I'm actually very, very happy with how this worked out. And last but not least, I have not put the Boyer ignition on this yet because just while this Eureka one is wired up, I figured I'd give it a go, and I timed it. What I did was I took the timing cover off because it was ridiculous. There's no way to actually adjust it from the timing side, so I had to adjust it from the back of the distributor. So I found top dead center, and then I adjusted this at top dead center, got a timing wheel out, did the whole thing, and I got this time fairly well. So I didn't strobe it. I don't have a strobe on me. I can get one, but I think it's very, very close. So we're going to see, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my bikes now and get my tripod out, and we're going to try to start this sucker up. Oh, sorry. All right, just a couple quick miscellaneous things. So how I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, you can see it right there. That's where that vent tube came out of the flange where the carburetor goes. And I filled it in with, I try to match it as close as possible with just very, very strong, high heat, gas and oil resistant epoxy. So I did it on both sides and also filled the hole in. It's sort of, you can see it shrinking just a little bit as it dried, but it's a solid core in there. There's no way in hell that is going to dislodge in any way. And you can see it now, but from a distance, it just disappears. So that's how I solved that. And then you remember I had to route this vent tube from the breather box. So you can see it's just routed right down. I don't know if you can see it, right down to the ground. There it is. So that's how I solved that one. And I'll show you one more thing on the other side. All right, so with the alternator wire coming out of the primary case, I did not want to use, you know, that black silicone sealant because it sort of just glues everything together, and then the wire doesn't move, and it just kind of makes a mess. And what you have in here, this wire comes through almost like a box in there that seems almost designed to sort of resist, you know, the fluid in here from getting out. So you already sort of have a kind of a wall there. So I just wrap this in electrical tape so it's thick enough that it's just a nice snug fit inside the hole coming out. And I bet that that's going to hold, and no fluid's going to come out. And then this way the wire is still free. If I have to take the stator off for any reason or whatever, it still slides in and out. So I think it's going to work. It looks a lot better. There's not like a mess of goo right there from the sealant. And so that's kind of how I solved this final one. And I bet it works. And finally, one more thing before we start this up, or at least make the attempt. I forgot, I never told you what oil I use. I showed everything else, but, and it just fills in right there. It's very simple, and it's got a simple dipstick. But I use Valvoline conventional 20W50 mineral oil, you know, not synthetic blend, and definitely not synthetic. Even though this is a brand new engine, basically, I still always go with a bike like this, 20W50 conventional mineral oil, and you're done. And Valvoline's a good one, and it's like $6 a quart. So win-win on that. Okay, one more thing.
There is one more thing.
I'm sorry, there's one more thing. I put the new headlight on. This is just a conventional stock headlight. I think it looks a lot better. It also has a proper bulb in there now, so it's not going to be pulling too much energy. Although I'll tell you what, with the new alternator I have, it's stronger than the stock one. And the way it works, it only supplies power as needed, so it's not going to overload the system just on its own. So it probably would have worked with that headlight, but I'm glad I got the stock one. It just looks better. I didn't like that hood that was on there. I'm glad I got that off. And then I also replaced the two pilot lights, so these are new. And the glass is clear. It was all fogged up and looked bad with the old ones. New bulbs all around. Everything's working perfectly. Let's start the bike. All right, so this thing kicks back pretty bad. It was doing it when I started it for like 2 seconds last time, but if it kicks back a little bit, it is what it is. We'll see what happens, but I'll try to iron that out with the timing. Oh man, this is a long time coming, I'll tell you. I mean, it's been since God, around February, March of this year. So it's been a lot of work. You know, a lot of frustrations with just parts issues. That's been the biggest frustration. Just problems with parts, wrong parts, delays with parts. That's been the biggest frustration. The work itself wasn't really hard. It's just you know, when you're doing such an extensive rebuild on kind of a, you know, I wouldn't say a really rare bike, but for the U.S., it's a fairly rare bike, and parts aren't the easiest thing to find, especially in the U.S. So, you know, I was doing a lot of dealing overseas, and it's just, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it came together incredibly well. I couldn't be happier. I actually just took it for a ride around the garage. I just went around, you know, around and then back again, and everything feels great. The transmission is spot on. I mean, it's so much better than it was when it was running a year ago. Just the new clutch and, you know, just everything I've done to it has just really improved it. But the new clutch in particular, I think, has made a big difference. But here we are. So it's not 100% yet. The timing is not 100%. It's close, but you can feel that's a little bit off. And this is just a sloppy ignition, this Eureka ignition. It's got some play in it, so even if you time it right, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right on. So I'm just going to sort of tweak it a little bit by ear, kind of the old school way. But I'll get it dialed in, and you know, the Boyer's going on there soon enough. But while I got this thing running with the Eureka already wired up, I'm going to have some fun with it. And then, you know, another project in the not so near future, or the not so distant future, will be the Boyer ignition. And one other thing is the alignment's a little bit off. When I put the new chain on and I aligned it, I just sort of expanded it, but equidistant on either side of what was already there. And apparently it was off, you know, prior. So I need to loosen the axle and just align this just a little bit to the right. It's not terrible, but it's off just a little bit. You can see it. And then I'm just going to clean and lube the chain because it just got a little gunk on it as I was, you know, doing all the work. But we're there, and I anticipate taking this thing out this weekend for an inaugural ride, and I'll take you guys along with me. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you're new, definitely subscribe and stick around. A lot of cool stuff is coming up. And if you haven't seen the earlier videos, go check those out. You can see a total rebuild of this bike all the way down to a new crankshaft and crankcase bearings. And I'll be doing a first ride video on this and then a full review. I'll probably take it out either tomorrow or the next day. And I was also playing with the timing, and I got that dialed in, so that's good. So it's starting within 2 or 3 kicks now, where it could take 5 minutes at the beginning. So timing is definitely dialed in. A couple little things to iron out. The throttle's a little bit sticky. I think the cable might be a little crimped somewhere. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why it's happening, but I'll get that ironed out. Just a couple little things, but we're here and it's ready to ride. You know, there's nothing wrong with it that's going to stop me from riding it. It's just very minor things. So the video I did on my Suzuki was the least liked by far. I barely got over 100 views, but I'm still going to do videos on it because I love this bike.